the performance of the class of 2020, 2021, and 2022. At that time, we said to them, the class of 2022, from the indicators of overall enrollment, learners who passed, learners who pitched for the exam, number of distinctions, they were the best class compared to all other previous classes. They then said to us, if you think that you have seen the best is yet to come. And my response to them was that time will tell. That time has come, and that time is now. And thank you very much for attending our technical briefing. The purpose of a technical briefing is to provide technical details that ordinarily wouldn't be covered in the minister's speech of the announcement of the results. If you like, a technical briefing is a prelude, it's a precursor to the announcement of the results. It rolls the carpet for the moment that the minister will be coming and announce the results to the nation. So I'm going to go through this technical briefing. It's quite comprehensive. And the problem with this technical briefing, Chair Fumalusi, is that it increases in volume every year. It's because we get very excited in mining the data from one administration to the other. But I only have an hour to an hour and a half to cover this technical briefing, so I'm going to try and hit the punchline, but also not compromise anything from the technical briefing. Well, the first part in terms of what is on the technical briefing is what we call our mantra as the basic education sector, extracted from the National Development Plan. Three things from this extract of the National Development Plan. South Africans are entitled to an education and training system of the highest quality. And we achieve this by improving learning outcomes. And this enjoins all of us to work extremely hard every day to make sure that learning outcomes do improve. Of now late, we talk about the Kaizen principle in the department, which is about gradual improvement of what you do. So every year we set goals of what we want to achieve. And this mantra is really to keep us focused on that goal of improving the system every year. The last point on this extract is about improving our performance in international tests to be comparable to countries of the same level of development or economy. Your PALS, progress in international reading and literacy studies, we had the results released on the 6th of May last year, which were not good, but we now know why our results for reading are not good. And the answer is very simple. We have to focus on languages and home languages in particular. It's not only about reading, because it's bigger than just reading. What is also important is our strategic direction. Strategic direction covers our international, continental, and national obligations. As you can see, there are obligations that we're reporting against regularly to UNESCO internationally, but there are other obligations that we are also reporting about in terms of the African Union. The same applies to our region, including the national development domestically. Well, just to remind ourselves about who we are 9 + 1 department, 9 provincial education departments, and the National Department of Basic Education, 75 education districts, 889 circuits, 24,000 schools, 836. And 22,000 of these schools are public schools, and 2,000 of these schools are independent schools, which means that the independent schooling sector has the biggest portion of schooling. And this provides a very nice split. In terms of the learner numbers, 95% of our learners are from your public schooling sector, 5% are from independent schools. In terms of educators, 90% are from the public schooling sector and 10% from independent schools. Schools, 91% account for public schooling sector and 9% private schooling sector. In other countries, private schooling dominates schooling. We had a meeting with Qatar 2 days ago, and they shared with us that 60% of their schools are private schools. And you go to many other countries, you'll see that private schools are quite dominant in many of these countries. Just a reminder that in assessing progress that we make, 6 social justice principles are important: access, redress, equity, efficiency, quality, and inclusivity. South Africa's basic education system has made very good progress in 4 out of 6. We still have to work very hard to improve the time it takes for a learner to enter our schooling system and exit. We still also have to improve the quality of our learning outcomes. And I'm sure the technical report will share a bit on this as well. The road traveled by the class of 2023 has been a road of 12 to 13 years of schooling. And my humble appeal is that when we assess the performance of this class, we don't only focus on grade 12, because the journey started in 2012. It's a 12 to 13 years journey of schooling. And this is the educational context. They were also caught up when COVID struck in 2020. They were in grade 9, and we had to come with amendments, both in grade 10 as well as grade 11. Amendments that relate to assessment, allocate more of the assessment to school-based, and we think that it has paid a lot of dividends, not only to this class, but also to the previous classes, such as the class of 2021, the class of 2022 as well. And I'm sure we'll remember that some of the countries had to shut down their education system when COVID struck. I mean, some of the countries stopped schooling for 2 years, others stopped for 1 year, others even suspended public exams completely, and they used school-based assessment to determine the progression of their learners. But in South Africa, we managed to continue, and we want to thank the leadership in the sector, the minister, MECs, the leadership in government, the president and the cabinet, and the South African public in general for having supported us to restore schooling in 2022. Otherwise, we could also be working with a deficit of some of the classes that would still be lagging behind. To focus these classes from 2020, we had to look at our annual teaching plan, trim the curriculum, so that we spend more time focusing on teaching, and we focused on fundamentals that are necessary for scaffolding so that learners are prepared for subsequent grades. We also, because we had suspended half-yearly exams, preparatory exams, to afford more time for teaching. And you'll see, even in these results, that made a huge difference, not only to the class of 2023, but to previous classes as well. The diagnostic report of 2022 came in handy to identify weaknesses in each of the subjects and get teachers as part of their day-to-day teaching to address those weaknesses that are identified so that the class of 2023 would perform even better than the previous classes. Study guides were provided. Remote and digital learning came in quite handy, especially when it was difficult for learners to be at school every day. It's important also to remember that this class went through rotational timetable. Some of them would attend today and then skip a day or two, or attend this week, skip a week, and maybe come after a week or two. So they went through all of this. What is the context of this class? I'm sure this is a slide that many South Africans like. Professor Jonathan Jansen used to refer to the data that is on this slide, saying that there are 1.2 million learners who enter the system, but those who leave the system are far less than those who entered the system. And I'm sure that we'll appreciate that there's a smooth progression from 1.2 to a million to 900,000. Your biggest dip happens in grade 11. And we think we know why that dip is happening. Part of it is gatekeeping, because we put pressure on the system, school principals, on teachers, on districts and circuits to perform. And sometimes it lends itself to deviant behavior, such as keeping some of the learners who are not going to give them good passes in grade 12. And we are monitoring this. And through the policies that we've introduced in the system, we want to make sure that we continue with the smooth progression across the system. But the biggest problem, as we can all see, is in grade 11, which we need to improve. We've also seen that there's been improvement over the years in terms of the number of learners who enroll, who enter, and eventually end up writing the exams. We are pleased to see that this class of 2023 came out as being the best so far in terms of pitching up for the exams. They have the lowest absentee rate in terms of exams at 3.4% compared to previous classes. And my team told me that this should be the best show compared to all other previous classes. This is the full-time enrollment comparing 2019 to 2023. As we can see, we've increased the enrollment from 600,000 to 700,000. As you might have seen, we are likely to maintain the enrollment around 700,000, and I think that is good. The best that we could do could be to increase that enrollment or even keep it as we move from one year to the other. Part-time enrollment has increased, and we've seen an increase from 168,000 to 862, and these are learners who might have passed 4, 5, or 6 subjects. They are left with 1 or 2, so they want to quickly write those subjects, and some of them will also be updating the nation on how they would have performed in those subjects that they would have enrolled this year coming from the previous years. Looking at the enrollment across all the 9 provinces, we have a drop of 33,000. The biggest drop, as you can see, is in Limpopo at 16,762. We're still investigating that. There's been a slight increase from the Eastern Cape, 700. A significant increase from the Western Cape, 1,739. And then, in terms of the part-time candidates, our Achilles heel here is the number of those who entered and the number compared to the number of those who write. We have a lot to do in this area in terms of our second chance Matric program. It doesn't seem to instill the confidence that we'd like to see from our young people who are writing part-time, so that more and more of them are writing. We'll see when we look at the performance of the part-time candidates, how they are performing. Well, in terms of gender, the split is between 56% and 43%, which is fairly healthy over the years, so there's nothing to worry about there. In terms of the enrollment in your what we call high enrollment subjects, we can see that the highest drop was in English first additional language. This is your highest enrollment subject in the system. Almost all learners enroll for English first additional language. You see that the drop there is even higher than your overall enrollment of 33,000, it is 36,000. And what the team advised me was that there's a possibility that there's been also a move of some of the learners from enrolling English first additional language to move to other first additional languages. And it is, of course, followed by Maths Lit, then Geography, and the rest of the other subjects. These are the technical subjects. If I would have it my way, South Africa as a nation, we all have to encourage our young people to move in this direction. Economies that seem to be doing well, they have a very good split between your technical occupational stream compared to the academic stream. The academic stream is very small. It's a split of between 40% academic stream to 60% technical and vocational stream. At the moment, over 90% of our learners are offering academic stream subject, which is not healthy for our economy. In terms of enrollment, there's been a drop also, and the enrollment doesn't seem to in fact, the increase doesn't seem to compensate for the enrollment experienced in these technical subjects. So we really need to work on encouraging more and more of our young people to enroll for these technical subjects. We introduced this technical subject split in specializations in 2018. We haven't seen a significant increase as per the enrollment per subject. South African Sign Language, we've dropped the numbers from 2010 to 129, which is not good news. We should see an increase in schools that are offering South African Sign Language, but also consider also introducing the offering of South African Sign Language to ordinary public schools to afford social cohesion in our nation. Progressed learners, there's been a decrease from a number of provinces, an increase in the Eastern Cape, 1,493, an increase also in Limpopo. The highest increase is from Mpumalanga, 2,212, and overall an increase of 1,000 982. These are learners who ordinarily would have been lost in the system. And we like saying here, CEO, there is no rubbish bin for human beings. You never give up on human beings. Human beings flourish and perform and get re-energized at different phases of their lives. And there is that possibility, especially with our young people, that as we give them another chance in life, they tend to do exceptionally well. Full-time enrollment by age, we still have learners at age 15 who would have started school even around 4-year-old instead of 6 years or 7 years old. But what is good is that in terms of the enrollment for 2023, learners of the appropriate age who would have been 18, they stand tall above the rest. So which is good news for the system. We perform even better than in 2022 in terms of learners of the appropriate age of schooling who would have started school at 6, turning 7, they would have been 18 years old. We do have some of the learners who stay until very late in our schooling system, up to even 30 years, which should not be a norm. You can see that is an exception, and we don't encourage that. Part-time, we can see that 2023, because there is an increase in the overall enrollment of our part-time candidates, and again, you can see the 19-year-old is right up there. We've got learners up to 65 years old. That's good news for the system. It means that South Africans still have faith in public schooling. They still enroll, and many of them do well, even at that age. Full-time enrollment by age and gender, we can see that in terms of gender, girls doing very well from a very young age up to the appropriate age of schooling, which is 18. The boy learner problem then begins from age 20, as you can see going down there. So we still have this challenge of providing the requisite support for our boy learners so that they come on board. We had support programs for girl learners. They reflect a lot of dividends. And we also now have to pay attention to the boy learner. The data seems to reflect that. Part-time, as we can see, part-time female candidates are doing well all rounds. As we can see from the enrollment there, they seem to be doing well as compared to our male part-time learners. Learners with special education needs, we have improved this data compared to previous years. We now have data where provinces are able to account better for this. 5,458 learners enrolled for the National Senior Certificate for learners with special education needs. And 5,000 entered, and 5,288 wrote. These are barriers to learning, and what I need to indicate is that the reason why the figure of 5,000 seems to have been increased in this slide is because some of the learners have got more than one barrier to learning. One learner could be blind and be deaf, and we also record them as such. That's why the number seems to show an increase from the actual learners. This one is the warm bodies, the learners who are enrolled and who wrote as learners categorized for learners with special education needs. But these ones are barriers to learning. And as I've said, one learner could have more than one barrier to learning. Accommodation and concession. This is about affording more time for learners who are very slow in writing, but have the same cognitive ability that you could get from learners who are not struggling with time, who are not struggling with being able to see what is written on the question paper. So we make sure that we deal with this requests of learners who need to be afforded accommodation and concession of either extra time, of either the adaptation of the question paper, or providing them with a question paper in Braille, so that every learner is given a fair opportunity to write the exams. Fairness is a cardinal point. It's a very important point when it comes to assessment. Social grant enrollment, we've just seen a slight drop from 595,000 to 564,000, roughly the same, but a slight drop, of course, informed by the overall drop of 33,000. This is enrollment per grant type. The biggest enrollment is with child support grant, whether it's active or is inactive, as we can see there. The child support grant accounts for the highest number, whether it's active or inactive. This class has been provided with extraordinary support. The reality is that we are an unequal society. We still remain an unequal society when others have got a number of tutors lined up for them. Learners in the villages, in the townships, in the informal settlement, the only aspect that they rely on is a teacher. And in South Africa, our government across all the 9 provinces provide a comprehensive support to our learners. And I must say, this support does not only begin in grade 12. It starts even from the foundation phase. Some of the provinces introduced extensive support from the foundation phase, intermediate phase, to make sure that learners are provided with the same kind of basis to be able to succeed in life. We're also saying we had distinct features of the learner support program for 2029. In other words, we did things that we didn't do before, or if we did the same thing, we did them differently. And we even follow through our support. We are critical about what we do. We do action research. We check the impact. We track learner performance on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis, to determine whether there's any impact in terms of the support that has been provided. I must applaud strong partnership across broader civil society, teachers who worked extremely hard. Sometimes they don't even have family life. They work during weekends. They work during school holidays. They camp at school with these learners. And we want to applaud even parents who worked extremely, including our officials, both from national and provincial level. And I must also applaud our teacher unions. All of them have got institutes for professional development of teachers. All 5 teacher unions are involved in the professional development of our teachers. Some of them even have awards for their members who perform well in their schools. There's one event that we attended in KZN where they acknowledged both officials, school principals, heads of department, and teachers who did well during the administration of the class of 2022. And I must say that the improvement in the system is attributable to all these efforts, and we applaud all our teacher unions across the board. These are the pillars of the National Strategy for Learner Attainment. In the interest of time, I'm just going to run over this. These are common learner support modalities that this class benefited from. These are just examples of the learning and teacher support materials provided to our young people. Grade R learners receive 4 workbooks every year without fail. Grade R, from grade R. That's the kind of support that we provide in the system so that our learners, throughout their progression, they are fully supported. This is the example of grade 10, the example in grade 11, engagements with school principals and officials towards the end of the year. And I know that this happens from provincial officials, district officials, doing even more of this. Was a Matric, which also provided support to the class of 2023. Vocational support programs, including weekend programs. In summary, we are saying the 2023 learner support program was the largest and most comprehensive, and it provided unprecedented support to the class of 2023. This is the minister's meeting with district directors, including an event where the minister appreciates and acknowledges districts that have performed well. So the minister is leading from the front together with our MECs to acknowledge not only learners, teachers, and schools, but also district directors who have performed well in this. Scope and size of the exam, I'm not going to take much time. We always boast that the administration of our exams is only second to local government or national elections. The scope and size of our exams, and this grows every year. As you would see from the table that is shared on the screen, the number of invigilators, even the number of monitors also increase from one year to the other. Standardization, Professor Balim advised us not to respond to all these things that come from some people who want to suggest that in case there's an improvement in the results of this year, is because we have benefited from the generosity of COVID. And I want to just share with you, this is one article that I got from my colleague who shall remain nameless, which was about decisions that were taken in the UK after COVID. And this, you can see, was an article which was issued in August last year, where they wanted to go back to the way they've been doing their exams, which means that they had, as I said, to reconsider the way they were running their exams before. In South Africa, it never happened. You know, even the trimming of the curriculum for grade 12 remained the holy cow. It was very clear that we're not supposed to even touch the curriculum for grade 12. And these are the results of standardization over the year. If you look at 2023, we had 66 subjects. 49 of them were accepted on raw marks. 11 of them were adjusted downwards. I repeat, 11 of them were adjusted downwards, not upwards. And 6 of them were adjusted upwards. If you look at the figures, I mean, you look at the number of those, what compares with 11 was the 11 in 2018, 2 years before COVID. If anyone wants to suggest that this class of 2023 has benefited from any generosity of COVID, the numbers don't seem to agree with that assertion. Historical trends, we expect the results to improve. We expect them to improve. And I must say that we've seen the best raw marks that we've ever seen before. I can see the journalists are not listening to me. I'm saying we've seen the best raw marks ever in the history of our education system from the class of 2023. So the minister, in a few minutes from now, will reveal exactly how this class has performed. Just as a reminder that our NSC qualification is a 4-quadrant qualification. The first quadrant is about preparing our young people to be accepted at higher education institutions, and universities have got their own rating. They don't just say you've got a bachelor, we take you. They have something called APS. If you meet their rating, you go to the relevant faculty where you need to study. But even if you have a bachelor, if you don't meet their rating, you will not be accepted in the faculty where you want to study if you don't meet the rating or if you don't present the points that are required for your admission. Whether it's law, whether it's engineering, whether it's medicine, they've got their own requirements. And therefore, the second quadrant, it's about studying in diploma fields, and then the third one is about higher certificate, and the fourth one is just being a good citizen. We're reminded that during the funeral service of Professor Lolwana, Peliwe Lolwana, that she used to say, as a South African, you need 2 documents. The first one is the ID, the second one is the Matric certificate for you to be able to maneuver, highlighting the importance of the Matric certificate. So National Senior Certificate could be for those who just want to be good citizens. They want to have this certificate, they don't want to pursue anything, and if they have this certificate, it could open opportunities for them to even further and even improve their qualifications. And I hope it will help to bring to the end the notion of 30%, which I saw in the last day or two, has resurfaced in the last day or two. But the experts have advised us not to respond to these things, but just ignore them, they said to us. Performance of the class of 2023, we are therefore expecting this class to improve, based on the fact that they've presented the best raw marks. The standardization process has gone on exceptionally well, and the best brains that you have in this country are the ones who preside over the standardization of the Matric results of the young people of our country, retired professors and professors who are still serving. If you put their experiences together, I don't know what figure one would arrive at, Dr. Rakometsi. And these are men and women, men of integrity, who do their work, mindful of the fact that the outcomes of that process has got to be credible and even reliable. Well, just to give you a snapshot, because a technical report is about doing that, in terms of the class of 2023, as we can see, no fee-paying status. You can see that Free State takes number 1. Number 2 is taken by KZN. When you go to, it's no fee-paying status. Fee-paying status, you then see Free State again, number 1. Number 2, this time around, goes to Mpumalanga. And then if you go to independent schools, number 1 goes to Northwest. Number 2 then goes to Gauteng. And then when you look at number 3, goes to Western Cape. So it's not about overall performance in the results. is looking at the various categories where different provinces would be able to perform at different levels. Again, in terms of passes per classification, when it comes to bachelors, we'll wait for the minister on that one, but you can see that we've been on an upward trajectory. And just to remind ourselves that bachelors are about quality, distinctions are also about quality. Although our overall enrollment has dropped by 33,000, the number of bachelors have phenomenally increased. The number of bachelors have phenomenally increased. To just give you a glimpse, out of 10 learners, 4 learners could be presenting with bachelors in terms of the 900,000 candidates who enrolled for the National Senior Certificate and wrote in 2023. Now, I've even given you the bachelors that the minister will be announcing this evening. Out of 10, 4 of them would be presenting bachelors or would have passed with bachelors, which means it has increased from last year. Again, in terms of the NSC bachelor's diploma passes by fee status, 2023, we can see here fee paying in terms of bachelor's diploma passes by fee status. The leading province here in fee paying, we can see it's at 55.9, which is Free State, followed by Limpopo at 55.3. When you go to independent schools, the leading province is Gauteng. No, it's Western Cape. Yeah, it's Western Cape at 59.5, followed by Gauteng at 59.1. When you proceed, go to no fee, in terms of bachelors, you can see the leading province is KZN, followed by Free State, KZN at 44.3, and then followed by Free State at 41.4. So what is good about this is that whether it's fee status or whether it's looking at different variables that we use to assess progress, you see provinces performing in different categories at different positions and so on. I'm going to move over this ones in the interest of time. In terms of gender, the split, it's really between 27 and 37 and 31 and, 39 and 44 across the board. Now, here is a very good story. And I'm just going to touch one column in the interest of time. Schools that are getting 80% to 100%, in 2022, we had 3,946. The number increased to 4,493, which means 501 schools improved their performance to move to 80 to 100%. You can see that there is a healthy improvement towards the right. Performance of progressed learners in 2022 were at 43.6. These are learners that ordinarily would have not reached grade 12, but because the policy afforded them to be progressed, they managed to reach grade 12, and it improved to 45.5%. And quite a number of these learners even got bachelor passes as well. And this is performance of progress learners by achievement and qualification type, as I've said, 3,147 of them have been able to pass with bachelor's and could even proceed to university if they meet the requirements. In terms of progress learners, Free State is leading, 56.7%. And the tendency most of the time is that the extent to which you're able to pull the weakest group of your learners will afford you a leverage to be able to lead the rest of the other provinces. And I'm saying if you do well in terms of progress learners, the likelihood is that you might actually even lead overall. And the trend is the same here in terms of schools performing, school performance by quintile. From 2022 to 2023, we've seen a similar increase, although not as big as we have seen from the 501 schools. You can now see from 641 to 674, which is an improvement from last year. I'm going to move to this slide. This is the slide that the President likes quite a lot. After we briefed him, as we moved to other slides, he stayed here and said, I'm still internalizing this slide. He calls this a silent revolution. In 2005, your quintile 1 to 3, or poor schools, accounted for between 20 and 40% of the results, when your what we call affluent schools, quintile 4 and 5, which are roughly about 20%, accounted for 60 to 80% of the bachelors. But looking at how this class has performed, this class, in terms of the contribution of bachelor passes, they sit at 65.3%, compared to 34.7%, which means you'll have these bachelor passes in the informal settlement, in the township, in the villages, in commercial farming areas, when in the past, urban areas used to dominate in terms of the contribution of bachelor passes. So it shows that schools that used to be dysfunctional, 80% of them, according to the diagnostic report of the National Planning Commission in 2012, those schools are now contributing towards the improvement of the quality that we see. Performance by age, we can see that, as we always say, you catch them young. The younger the learners are in the system, they become much more captive and they perform better. And that's why we discourage service delivery protests and other disruption to schooling, because once you lose their attention, it becomes very difficult to get them back to focus on schooling. So we can see that there is that indication there. And 2023 seems to be head and shoulder above even 2022 in terms of overall achievement by age, as we can see from the graph. Overall achievement by gender, male, female, we can see that females, the young learners are doing exceptionally well until up to age 22, and then female learners drop, and then the boy learners are taking over there in terms of, the boy learners start tapering down as well, and the girl learners are continue to dominate performance in terms of this graph as well. So overall, female learners are doing well. Boy learners are even, getting more depressed as you go down the age. So which means that the boy learner problem remains even compounded as they become older. This is the breakdown in terms of this table by age. And the bottom line, again, is that the younger they are, the better the attention and the more improved the performance also becomes. Inclusive basket, again, in terms of the inclusive basket, we can see that accounting, Free State seems to be leading there. In terms of mathematics, Free State is leading by 81.5%. Western Cape, in terms of mathematics achievement, is leading by 75.4%. Physical science, it is again Western Cape leading by 82.2%. Technical mathematics, it is KZN by 95.2%. Maths participation, in other words, the number of learners who enrolled for mathematics, it is Limpopo by 47.9%. And the experts are telling us that maths-related faculties in many universities are dominated by learners from Limpopo who perform at 60% and above. When it comes to distinctions this time in terms of percentages and even numbers, KZN is leading for the first time. When it comes to percentages, it has always been the Western Cape. When it comes to throughput, Mpumalanga is leading by 72.2, followed by Western Cape at 71.6. So essentially, you can see the strengths of all the 9 provinces according to different variables that we use to assess performance than just overall pass rate. And in terms of what follows is just to take the criteria that we have seen, right from overall pass rate up to even throughput rate, we just spread it across the 9 provinces and just show how those provinces are performing in those different criteria. As I move towards concluding, subject performance, South African Sign Language, for the first time, it did not benefit for upward adjustment, raw marks, 85.2%. And our hope is that it should be able to sustain that performance. For the 3 years, out of 3 years, is the first time that we are reporting raw marks of South African Sign Language and performing at 85.2%. And I think going forward we can do even better. Home languages, only 2 home languages dropped. English home language slightly dropped from 96.6 to 93. And then isiNdebele from 99.9 to 99.8. But the rest improved. Again, our solution to the reading problem, it's about home language, paying attention to our home language in all its aspects. Home language, we need to really focus on home languages to make sure that we break the challenge around our grade 4 learners being able to read with meaning. First, additional languages, improvement across the board. You can see that 2023 class outperforming the 2022 class, and in some cases, even previous classes. And the content subjects, only 2 subjects dropped, history, from 88.2 to 87.7. Maths lit dropped from 85.7 to 82.3. You can see mathematics surprised us this time around. Mathematics performed at the level that it never performed before. And I think if we can sustain this and even use the strategies that we used for mathematics for other subjects, then the future will be very bright for our country. There'll be no subject that is going to be an Achilles heel for our learners in our country. First additional language, improvement across the board. Technical subjects, only electrical technology, digital system, dropped from 97.7 to 97.2. We seem to be doing well. We've started doing well in these technical subjects. All that we need to do is to increase the enrollment rate. These are subjects that are needed now and subjects for the future. I'm not saying other subjects are not important. Our economy requires these subjects. And therefore, more and more learners must be encouraged to enroll for technical subjects. They are now performing. In the past, we used to have a problem around success rate. In other words, performance being very low. You've seen how the performance has improved over the years. District performance. In 2022, we didn't have any district in 50% and below, 50% to 59.9, and in 60 to 69.9, we had 4. In 70 to 79.9, we had 29. And in 80 and above, we had 42. That was in 2022. In 2023, nothing under 50 and below, nothing under 50 to 59.9, only one district out of 75 districts that we have in the country, only one, 60 to 69.9. And the rest have improved. 70 to 79.9 have now been reduced from 29 to 19, which means 10 of them moved over. From the 4 that were under 60 to 69.9, 3 of them moved to 80, to increase 42 by 13, which gives us 55. There are 9, out of 9 provinces, 3 of the 9 provinces have all their districts performing at 80% and above. And I don't think it's a mean feat. 3 of the 9 provinces, all provinces performing at 80% and above. Top 10 districts, you can see the highest performing district this time around, and it's been a very hot contested competition between particularly district number 2 and district number 1. The difference is less than 1%, as you can see. The highest performing district is at 92.5. The second highest is at 91.2. I must just warn you that these differences, you find them even between provinces themselves. The differences are very minuscule, are very small between provinces. There's movement from the top, there's movement in the middle, there's movement at the bottom. What used to be the province number 9, you will not find when the minister announces the results this evening. So there's movement all over. Learners with special education need, 76.6 in 2022. In 2023, 86.6, improvement of 10%. I'm saying learners with special education need, the improvement is from 76.6 to 86.6, an improvement of 10%. Distinctions. KZN is leading from 6% that they obtained in 2022. They've now moved to 8.3% distinctions. KZN accounts for 25% of the total number of learners in the system, is the biggest part of our system, followed by Gauteng. And you can see there how KZN is performing. Number and percentage of distinctions in the 12 key subjects. You can see that overall improvement. There's a drop in Afrikaans first additional language, a drop in English first additional language, a drop in English home, also a drop in life sciences, but overall increase or improvement in the percentage of the subjects. Distinctions for progressed learners. There are 3 distinctions for mathematics from progressed learners, and several distinctions in physical science, an avalanche of distinctions in accounting from progressed learners. Learners benefiting from social grants, the performance improved from 78.1% to 81.2%, comparing these 2 years. Social grants performance in active versus active learners. Active learners active learners are those who are still receiving grants. The grant would be stopped beyond age 18. Those learners who are still benefiting from these grants, they performed at 89.2% compared to those who don't receive the grant, who are no longer benefiting from the grant, which is 78.62%. The split between male versus female is 81%, essentially the same. The difference is 0.16 and 0.39, which is very small. Social grants performance by qualification, 202,000 of these learners would have passed by bachelors. 202,000 of learners who receive social grants or one grant or the other would have passed by bachelor. Correctional services, last year they performed at 95.91%. This year the performance is at 93.2%, a slight drop from last year. These are full-time candidates. Part-time candidates, they performed at 37.3%. This year they also dropped to 16.1%. Part-time candidates, the performance is decimal. Our second chance Matric program needs to do much more to improve this performance. You can see that these part-time candidates have not really performed as we would have expected from them. This is the summary of the results. We usually report on this in terms of the 6 social justice principles: access, redress, equity, efficiency, and quality. And all the slides cover all of the slides. And this brings me to the end of this presentation. And I think as we started with an extract from the National Development Plan, the performance of this class should at least get us to a point where we're able to say we are at least able to tell a new story, and we have renewed our story along the way. We're hoping that when the minister announces, this will become real. Thank you very much for indulging me. Thank you to the media. Thank you to the South African public and nation. And thank you to the audience in the hall. Thank you very much. There are questions. We do entertain questions. I saw experts in the room, researchers.